Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the American Hotspur here on Stateside Footy. For all those that are tuning in, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. And if you guys are watching on TikTok Live, obviously you can go ahead and follow, or if you want to head over to the YouTube, the link is in the bio. All right, let's go ahead and get into it because we are 24 hours removed from an FA Cup disaster. The first opportunity for, the first point of entry, Spurs end up dropping it 2-1 to an Aston Villa side that were absolutely far and away at just a better side. But that being said, it was a tale of two halves. And of course, if those that were obviously watching along, we saw the disaster of that first half, followed up by a second half that was a little bit better. But that being said, it was too late for our beloved Tottenham Hotspur. Now that the dust is settled, and now that we've had time to digest this, I thought I would come on and talk a little bit about it because I don't necessarily know where to stand on when it comes to Thomas Frank. It's kind of odd because I feel like I'm 100%. I'm definitely angry about it, obviously, because I look at our club and I look at the state of things of which our club sits at right now, and I just want to throw something against the goddamn wall. It is an absolute shame how fast this club has fallen in 6 years, and what this club has been reduced to. The history, the lineage, the passion, and the fact that the fans are the only ones that are keeping this team and the expectations that go along with it still intact. And yet, obviously, this club has been mismanaged to the point where I think the only thing you can do at this point is absolutely laugh at it, right? Because 6 years ago, we were in a Champions League final. We were at the top of the mountain. We were ready to peak and plant the flag at the goddamn top of the mountain while Aston Villa was in the championship, relegated. 6 years later, they're 3/4 of the way up the mountain. And, we're on the brink of potentially, a relegation scrap if things continue. And so I thought I would come on and talk a little bit about it. Let's go ahead and check the chat because we have Wayne Bonner, who I absolutely love right here. He goes, good morning, afternoon, Steve, and to all in the chat. Hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well as well over there too, Wayne. We have Adrian from Spurs Diehard, TTID, Tottenham Till I Die. Good afternoon, Steve. Et al. I like et al, by the way, whoever et al is. Wayne Butter says the better team won the first half. The better team lost in the second half. Yeah, that's insane how that works, right? That's the beauty about football, but not necessarily when you're a Spurs fan. We have Leet Hayid 7Y7Y afternoon. To you all, not happy fan, but there's only one thing that needs to be done, and Frank has to go now. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about that because it's interesting, right? It seems to be a tale of the first 6 months of Thomas Frank's tenure because when Thomas Frank was hired, I think there was a little bit of I wouldn't say joy. I know there was a lot of skepticism with the hire because of the fact that he had no European experience, and there was a stark difference. And yesterday on a couple of shows that I went on, and I said, listen, the reason why I had respect for Ange Postecoglou and I had the confidence is because of his trophy haul. And it doesn't matter what league you're in at all. Winning trophies is one of the hardest things to do. Things have to break right for you to win it. And when you look at how he won those trophies, for me at least, that earned credibility. And I said at the time that if Daniel Levy was prepared to not only understand who he hired, but also was willing to actually give him the tools to succeed, it would be a good hire. Didn't happen. And of course, we go from a 5th place to a 17th place. Yes, we did win a trophy. But understandably, when you drop 29 points from winning positions, you're going to get fired. On top of the 22 losses. Fine, whatever. We hired Thomas Frank. And by the way, it's interesting that, Thomas Frank under Brentford, in the 22-23 season, he only dropped 13 points from winning positions. And then, of course, last year, he only dropped 14 points from winning positions. And so you kind of look at it and you kind of understand why Daniel Levy and maybe Johan Lang were a little bit enamored with it, right? And you look at the culture that he built at Brentford, and you can kind of understand exactly why he was being interviewed for top positions. Then again, you also understand why now we understand why Manchester United said, I appreciate you interviewing, but thanks, but no thanks. And same thing with Chelsea. Two big clubs who, by the way, have just sacked their two managers. And I know some people might think it's brutal, but I absolutely like it because it sends a signal of intent that, yes, we are big clubs. And even though we invested, we're not afraid to actually do that. And of course, today we're hearing interesting things with coming out. And I hate the rumor. I seriously hate the rumor mill, because now we're hearing that the board is probably going to give him to the rest of the season because there is no suitable caretaker who they absolutely entrust to take over for the rest of the season. And so it feels like, unless things get absolutely dire, it feels like he's probably going to be here. That being said, when we look at Thomas Frank, it does seem like it's a tale of the first 6 months, because from August 16th to October 26th, he was 5-2-2 in the Premier League, 17 points. And it was in this stretch that when you look at the, you looked at the schedule, you were kind of saying to yourself, well, it's actually kind of a light schedule. And then there's a possibility here that we might be able to bank 20 points and actually put ourselves in a position where, because once the calendar switched to November and we started getting some of the better teams in the Premier League, and of course games were coming thick and fast with the domestic cup competitions, and of course the Champions League, we had an opportunity to kind of weather the storm until we get to January, and then we can actually get some reinforcements through the door. Because of course ENIC has made a bold proclamation saying this is ENIC 2.0. This is a new day. No more Daniel Levy. No more chaos. And of course, it hasn't played out that way. And from November 1st to January 7th, only 2 wins in the Premier League, 6 losses, 4 draws, only 10 points through that period. And of course, when you look at the domestic competitions, out against Newcastle at the first try, out against in the second try, we did beat Doncaster, and then of course against Aston Villa in this one, and of course we're still kind of hanging around in the Champions League. But again, when you start looking at what's left in January, one has to wonder if there's going to be any hope, any excitement against Borussia Dortmund under the lights, and of course at Frankfurt. And so one has to wonder. Let's go ahead and take a look, because we have Wayne Bonner here, who says Frank was and has proven to be an underwhelming appointment. I wanted Xavi. If ENIC won't back Frank this window, then sack him. Fair. We have DP Starify 2. To be fair, Man United only fired Amarim because of what he said in the presser, not because of the results. They've had horrendous hiring decisions, so we can't use them as a good example. That's also fair as well, too. Yeah, it is what it is. And then, of course, Greg, 1987. What's going on, man? Hey, sir, have a great stream. No panic level of Man U going after Poch. I know this is off topic. It wouldn't surprise me. But yes. And now we're at it seems like we're at a tipping point, because results have continued to progress in the wrong position. Excuse me, the wrong direction. It feels like fans are at a fever pitch at this moment, because all you have to do is take a look at whether you're on Facebook, X, whether you're on Twitter, and when you look at some of the content creators that really have a good feel of the pulse when it comes to Tottenham Hotspur, generally speaking, most probably would agree that it is not working. You do have a subset of fans who say, well, listen, man, the quality of the players on the pitch aren't good enough. And this is the reason why Ange got sacked, blah, 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 yakety, yakety, blah. I understand it. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. One of the biggest issues that I have with this is, and this is the reason why I'm torn, because on the one hand, I can understand the hire. And to be fair, we actually did get off to a good start. I mean, 17 points. Yes, dropping points against a Bournemouth team, dropping points against Wolves. It's not ideal. I get it. And then, of course, you had the absolute ass kicking to Aston Villa once the first time around. And then, of course, the match against Chelsea and, of course, our North London rivals against Arsenal at the Emirates. And it was really at those stages where you're kind of like, okay, this isn't exactly what we signed up for. And since that point, even in wins, even against Crystal Palace, let's be fair, we probably should have lost that one. And, Crystal Palace was absolutely battering us at points, and we just happened to get a lucky header on goal, and we were able to hold it off. But, the reality is we saw the very next week against Brentford, we saw it against Bournemouth again. And, this is exactly this is exactly what I have a feeling is this is going to play out if this continues on, because when I look at players on the pitch, it's not necessarily that they're not good enough. It's just that they're not being challenged. There is no unity and there is no harmony. And that, my friends, is the biggest indictment of Thomas Frank, because I'm going to, as a professional athlete, they like to be challenged, because professional football on any level is hard. But what professional athletes want is to be challenged so they can actually get the very best out of their performances. There is a certain level of expectations that go into every single match. There is a line in the sand that says, listen, man, this is to the level of what we're going to play, and nothing else is going to be accepted. There is, especially with this football club, and understanding just exactly what it means to actually wear the shirt. Anything less than that is not going to be acceptable. And that has been from the days of Arthur Rowe to the days of Bill Nicholson to Keith Birkinshaw to Terry Venables to Martin Yule to Harry Redknapp and Mauricio Pochettino, even with the likes of a guy like Jose Mourinho in Conte. There's a certain expectation level, and unfortunately, it's a shame how this is crumpled. The foundations that were set under a Martin Yule or a Harry Redknapp or a Mauricio Pochettino in the modern era, and from those highs of being so goddamn close, where every single time we played at White Hart Lane, it was a fortress. Nobody came in and punked us around. It was not a thing. And to see how far we've dropped, it is an indictment. It's an indictment on the club. It's an indictment on the people who are responsible for getting us to where we are today. And it's absolutely shocking. It's an absolute shocker. And my question to you is, where's the leadership? Where is the leadership at the moment? Where are these two guys? Right now, that is absolutely important. And of course, it's Vinny Venkatesham, and of course, Johan Lang. The two guys who literally are I guess you can say, the faces of the club at the moment. The guys that are responsible for, essentially cultivating an environment that they themselves have said, okay, this is a new day. Well, here's the thing. We are at a moment where we actually need our leaders to step up and actually, either be held responsible or at least tell us what the hell is going on. Let us understand what your vision is. Because there's a subset of fans, me included, that has no idea just exactly what the hell is going on at the moment. I would like to know, because we're hearing one thing. We're hearing one thing, and we are seeing something completely different. We were told that we are going to invest, that we want to win trophies. We want to get this team back up, not just into a Champions League position, but also win the biggest trophies in Europe. Okay, fair. Great statement. And now it's time to back it up. And now here we are, January the 11th, and we have a 19-year-old left back from Brazil coming through the door who's got an injury history. And it's not, and by the way, it's not the kid. The kid, by the way, the kid is whatever, man. It's irrelevant. He's like, and I don't mean to be crass by saying that, but it's not about him. It is about those that have made the decisions at this club. And this is, and for me, this is why it's hard for me to actually say, yes, Frank out, because he is only a symptom of the problem at Tottenham Hotspur. It is those that have hired him that looked at it and said, yes, I want to model Tottenham Hotspur after Brentford because of the stability, because of the continuity. And if you can build that foundation, we have the resources to take that to another level. And it rubs a lot of people the wrong way because financially, we are the 9th richest club in the world. The 9th. I think we're like the 3rd richest club in the Premier League. We are definitely, financially speaking, we are financially a Big Six club. I don't know what your guys' definition of Big Six is, but for me, I've always had the understanding that it is your ability to draw revenue, and that's exactly what the Premier League was created for. So the Big Five, the 2 North London clubs, the 2 Liverpool clubs, and Manchester United can actually reach their potential. And through the first 15, 20 years, you saw 3 of those 5 reach their potential. And then Manchester United became Manchester United. Manchester City became City. And yet Spurs, on the one hand, financially were able to kind of run neck and neck with some of those clubs, but yet the results on the field completely backslid. And here we are. There's no excuses. The funny thing about this is, the likes of Conor Gallagher, who's being linked to Villa. The funny thing about it is I'm not necessarily on board with them, but if that's somebody that you want to target, just go pay the money. Make a statement. If you want to turn around your reputation in the global market, you're probably going to have to make some decisions that doesn't reflect your values when it comes to resale on players. You're going to make a decision on João Pelini at the end of the season, and he's only 26 million euros. Conor Gallagher is 30, and you're going to dicker over a 19-year-old left back who's got injury issues with only 25 senior team play senior appearances. What are we doing here? That is the symptom of the problem. Because if we fire Frank, the problems don't fix it. We don't fix ourselves because it's not just a Thomas Frank issue. It is a absolute fundamental breakdown in our recruitment strategy. The people that have been hired, that, what's funny is we say that Thomas Frank is over his head at Tottenham. So is Johan Lang. And yet nobody's necessarily saying that. I don't understand why. I've been saying it for a good year and a half now that if you're changing your recruitment strategy to bring in youth, and you're going to build a subset of youth that has, a high ceiling, and if 5 of those guys kick on, your resale, you're going to be able to double and triple your money. Okay, fine. I guess Johan Lang is the good direction to go. But if you're trying to win trophies, you're going to have to bring somebody who's actually won trophies. And that means your director of football and your head coach. And ideally, you want those guys to be working together in unison. Because if you have harmony between those 2 levels, you're going to have it on the pitch. You're going to get that on the pitch. And we just haven't seen it. The funny thing is, it's when Daniel Levy fires Maurizio Pochettino and he brings in Jose Mourinho, he brings in a Ferrari, but he won't pay for the petrol. He won't pay, he won't pay for the high octane gas. It's like, what's the purpose of buying a Ferrari if you're not going to go fast? Like, what are we doing? Are we going 25 and a 65? Give me a break. Give me a break. We have let's see what we have here. We have Leet Hey ID Y7Y, who says, fed up with the same old story with signings and the results. It's all a smokescreen, to be honest. The board should have let Big Ange stay for another season at least, but now we are a laughing stock instead. I don't know, man. I don't know about it. I'll get back to that in just a second. I don't know. I don't know what Ange would have done, right? Because here's the thing. Last year, he did listen to his players, and I'll give him credit for that, because managers, just like players, have massive egos, and they have a hard time admitting when they're wrong. 100%, they have a hard time admitting when they're wrong. So from that standpoint, I would say that, kudos to Ange Postecoglou, who recognized it was the last opportunity to win a trophy. He was willing to do it, but he also put the responsibility on the players, and they came through, which actually kind of shows you just how good some of these players are, because they're willing to understand the situation that they're in, and they were able to come through. But the question, I guess, for you guys is, if we did retain Ange Postecoglou, would he have kept that, those same tactics that won us a trophy, or he would have gone back to the same style of tactics that led us to 22 losses? That's the question you have to ask yourself, really. Hotspur TV says, our midfield yesterday was 4 youngsters and 1 senior player in Paulinho. We need senior players, not more youth. Problem is, who is going to be attracted to come to Spurs now, given the situation? Money solves everything, big guy. Money solves quite a bit of problems. And if we are a serious club, and if we look at ourselves as a big club, then you're going to have to bite the bullet for at least a transfer window and pay the freight for whatever the player wants. If an agent comes to you and says, listen, man, the market value says 45, but we're looking for 65, do it. You might have to do it on a couple players that are going to be able to help you out and come right into the starting 11. I'm not speaking about the Lucas Bergvalls of the world or the Magnus Akaluches of the world, but, like, for instance, like, let's just say that it's like, that's a good question. Let's say, for instance, let's just say that, we were actually in the race for Savinho and it was 65, but, his agent is negotiating like 85, then you pay it. And you don't say no, you don't say, well, the market value, but you don't even negotiate. You just pay it. For certain players, just pay it. And that right there, if you do that for a full window, maybe it kind of changes your reputation in the global market. I don't know. We'll see. Leet Hey Yid 7 a Y7Y. There's no leadership at all. We are going down quicker than the Titanic, and that's being honest. We all keep getting these. All we keep getting is injuries. Yeah, we also don't have the squad depth either. That is also, for me at least, that is also a big red flag as well too. You actually have to make sure that your backups are quality Premier League backups, that when we do have injuries, the level doesn't necessarily drop. And there's a massive drop between what I would consider our first team and second team, inside our first team bubble, I guess you could say, our starters and our backups. There's a massive drop off. And of course, it did not help ourselves that we ended up selling players before we even got one through the door. That is actually a huge red flag, by the way, that you're willing to sell your backup right wing, and then the very next outing, your starting right wing goes down, and now all of a sudden we're using Lucas Bergvall at Bournemouth. It just goes to show you just how mismanaged we are at the moment. AK Shags, it's good to see you, man. He says, big up, Steve. Big up to you as well too. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday. Hotspur's TV says United have been a mess since 2013 when Fergie left 100% because it's hard to replace a guy who has literally been the boss for 30 years, and the expectations and the levels are set. A guy like Alex Ferguson who respects tradition and went back to the well to rebuild Manchester United on the spirit of a guy like Matt Busby, and essentially had his rendition of the Busby Babes. And it takes an absolute, tremendous amount of guts. But one of the things that, what he was able to do, especially when the Premier League actually broke away, was that he earned credibility by winning a couple of league titles, including a double, before getting rid of guys like Paul Ince and some of these other guys, and then going with the youth when he felt like they were ready to do it. And it took a huge amount of balls in order to do it. But, that is, Alex Ferguson in a nutshell. And it's something that Mauricio Pochettino was willing to do as well, too. And I think that's one of the reasons why, Spurs fans absolutely respect a dude like Pochettino. AK Sheg says, unpopular opinion, season's over. Don't make any big transfers this month. Play the youngsters. Buy big in the summer window when we hire a new manager. I would happen to agree with you on this one. I was in a minority that wants Mikey Moore to come back from Rangers, and Luka Vuskovic coming back from the Bundesliga as well too. Two very high ceiling quality youngsters that are absolutely having a ball in two biggish leagues, and it looks like they could be ready to kick on with a series of minutes. And I understand there's a want to keep them where they are because you don't want to necessarily disrupt those minutes, and the jump might be too big. But that being said, it's like if you're able to hit the ground running, Russell Martin didn't necessarily do any favors for Mikey Moore, but with Vuskovic, he hit the ground running in a rough and tumble league like the Bundesliga. It shows you his character. Time for Enoch to sell up. They're not serious owners and have no ambition on the field. Interesting, Jimmy Hotspur. I agree with you, and I actually do think Enoch have put Spurs up for sale. I would think that right now, the biggest reason why they haven't is because they're trying to get Daniel Levy to sell his 30% at a low number. And Daniel Levy is not a stupid individual. Anybody that's claiming that Levy's a dummy, you don't put yourself in a position to be a chairman for 25 years by being a complete idiot. And he understands exactly what his shares are worth, and he's not going to sell on the cheap and do Enoch a favor, especially after what happened and getting pushed out. The last thing he's going to do is do Enoch a favor. And so from that standpoint, you feel like it's kind of a stalemate at the moment, but I probably would assume eventually that is going to get done and Spurs are probably going to get sold. But what I will say is that ambition must change because, again, I feel like we're on a road to relegation if things do not immediately improve. And maybe some hard decisions are going to have to be made when it comes to Vinny and Johan Lang. And it probably starts with understanding that the current setup right now is anything but a good situation. There's no harmony within that dressing room. AK Shed says, if my Niners lose today, not sure what I'm going to do with myself. The Niners. All right. Yeah, so that's kind of where I stand today, and it feels like that's the bandwidth that most fans have. And again, I look at this and it's incredibly hard for me to get to that point because we did see this team actually play well in certain moments in that first couple months of the season. And I guess you can say you can chalk that up to a new coaching bounce, a new hired bounce. Okay, great. One of the things that in that time period that we didn't see this club go on a nice little run of form or a nice little purple patch where you had 8 wins in 10 or anything like that. we didn't see this team remotely put a team to the sword. And for me, those were kind of the big red flags. And it was, and I always go back to what was that match where, good Lord, let's go find it out real quick. It was the match against, it was just recently. Sorry about this, guys. It was the match against Brentford at home, December 6th. That was the match that I like to go back to, because Spurs actually did themselves a very good favor. And that was, they got off to a fantastic start. One of the biggest problems is the fact that they have yet to put together a full 90. Maybe you can say the second game of the season against Manchester City at the Etihad, you can possibly say that. But again, City was, they got off to a slow start. They weren't City yet. And when we see them again, there's a good chance that we're going to get played off the park. And then maybe against Everton there, where I think we ended up winning 3-0, 2 set piece goals. And I think we got one from the run of play late. Maybe you can say that we put them to the sword-ish. But, when you're going through this type of turmoil, these are the type of results you're going to get, where it's like you have a shitty half and you have a really good half. In that Brentford game on December 6th, we seemed to do everything right in that first half. We were pressing high. We were creating turnovers. We weren't passing the ball back, and we weren't shuffling. We weren't resetting. We weren't doing the things that absolutely make your nose and ears bleed watching this football team. And they were able to nick 2 goals. They were actually playing the ball through on counterattacks. They actually got on the foot of Xavi Simons, and all of a sudden, we got a first look at what Xavi Simons can do if he's used correctly. And then at the half, we took our foot off the gas. And then we reverted back to Frank ball. This weird tactics where we're slow and methodical, pushing up the pitch. We're not actually taking advantage of soft areas, and we're just constantly taking ourselves out of positions where we can actually be dangerous. And because of it, it looked like Brentford was kind of starting to get back into the match. And of course, they couldn't do it. They couldn't finish. But that being said, it's like we allow our opponents to continue to get back into the match. Again, when you look at Sunderland, another good example. Yesterday, it was the reverse, where we saw this again, and we saw this again. We've seen this a few times in the season, where we just absolutely start like shit. We concede the first half, and we play, we get ourselves in a position where if we're like 0-0 in the 60th minute, maybe we can nick a goal, and our defense is going to be good enough, and we can win 1-0. It just so happens that it was the FA Cup yesterday. And I got the impression that our players were like, lads, listen, let's throw out the playbook and let's go out and have fun, and let's go out and have a half. And now, granted, they weren't that great, because they still really didn't necessarily put 2 passes together, but they were playing hard. And that is actually just a prerequisite of even stepping on the field, right? But at least you can appreciate it. And it looked like the fans got behind them. And so you can appreciate that, but still, it was too little too late. And these are the red flags that, unfortunately, I just get the impression that this is going to continue to happen. And now when you look at what is going to happen with the rest of the January window, I would probably think that yesterday's loss in the FA Cup and the fact that we bowed out of the League Cup, that's going to be the excuse to not get players through the door. Maybe, just maybe, we might get one on loan if something happens to drop in our lap. But understanding that, number one, anybody that is experienced, Premier League experience, Champions League experience, is going to take a look at the situation and say thanks, but no. Morgan Gibbs White said no. Everett Chieze said no. Antoine Semenyo said, that's cute. That's cute. And if they say no, who are we? Like, who is going to be available right now that's going to say yes to us, except for guys like Jan Diamante, 23, 24, playing in the Bundesliga, looking to make his first jump to the Premier League. Or a guy like Magnus Akaluche, 114, 15 appearances in Ligue 1, who's looking to make his first jump to the Premier League. Like, those realistically are the type of players that we can attract right now. And I wouldn't necessarily be opposed, but anybody that has that experience, that oven-ready player that the fans are clamoring for, that's probably not going to happen until the summer. And mind you, the question is like, are they going to be willing to come play for a dude like Thomas Frank? You have to ask that question as well too. Like, how strong is Thomas Frank? I guess you could say as a recruiter as well too. Because the funny thing is like, Ange Postecoglou, one of the things that he actually did well was getting on the phone and talking to potential recruits and saying, hey, listen, you're going to be a focal point of my attack. James Maddison, players like that, Dominic Solanke, even Matisse Tell to a point where it's like, listen, this is what happens when you come in. You're going to get playing time, and you're going to be a focal point. And if you're James Maddison looking to go to your first big club, Dominic Solanke as well, coming off a pretty solid season, you're probably going to say yes to that. But if you're if you're somebody like, and I'm just throwing these names out there, but if you're if you're like a Florian Wirtz or a Alexander Isak, or if you're or you're a Harvey Barnes or a whatever the case may be, you're looking at Tottenham and saying, no, dude, this club is in disarray. It's not happening. Like, get your shit together first, and then maybe we'll talk. It's funny, like Spurs fans thought Jack Grealish was a player ready made for a team like Spurs, but dude, he took Everton over Spurs. It's interesting, right? It's interesting that when you see these type of failures in the open market, it lets you know exactly what the reputation is. And again, it goes back to the recruitment, right? How strong is Johan Lang? How strong is Thomas Frank to convince those players to come in? Jimmy Hotspur says, protest starts Saturday and will not stop. The fans are done with this ownership. Yes, that's only 50% of 50% of it, Jimmy Hotspur. See, here's the thing. There is a right way and there's a wrong way to protest. See, it does absolutely no good to protest while still buying tickets. Does that make sense? Because you're still giving ENIC what they want, which is your money. Understand that, right? Every time you buy a shirt, every time you buy a ticket, every time you buy a concession or pay for parking or whatever the case may be inside that stadium, that is what they want. The best way to protest is to not give them what they want. And if that means versus West Ham that they're only playing in front of 1,000 fans, that definitely sends a message. That is the biggest. That is the biggest form of protesting. Don't give them your money. Let's see. Adrian says, if there are to be changes or word from the hierarchy of the club, that won't happen until after the transfer window closes. Yeah, you're probably right about that. You wonder whether or not they want to see Thomas Frank versus West Ham and Burnley. Because we get West Ham at home, a stadium that we're just really not good at, unless we're playing Copenhagen. But the reality is, it's like you kind of wonder if they want to see that just to see exactly how far it's plummeted. I think you're right. Adrian. Let's see. Ange was great at attacking wise, but guess what you need to defend in anger last year, we didn't actually attack that much, but conceded so many goals. It was weird because like by the time we got to January 1st, we still had a really solid goal differential. It was that second half that really undid us last year, especially when we essentially sacked away the Premier League for the Europa League. Who are you bringing in, Muppet? I'm a Muppet? Okay. Let's see. John Maps. Thomas Frank has the potential to take Tottenham forward. What he's done at Brentford was of scale. He deserves a chance. Can I ask you what you like about Thomas Frank? And by the way, if you like Thomas Frank, fair enough, man. Fair enough. I'm not going to invalidate your opinions, but let me know what you like about him, and we can have a conversation. Sacking him changes nothing. I agree with that, Trev. And by the way, you and I can have a conversation without taking a piss on each other. And he goes on to say, Franken, fair enough. At Spurs, at the moment, it's like shitting in a bucket and coming back later and hoping it turns to gold. Yeah. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. AK Shag says our available 11 during the first half season was so much better than the second half of last season. Yeah, for sure. It was interesting. And by the way, Ange Postecoglou was a little bit guilty because he tried to bring back, Romero and Van de Ven before they were ready. He tried to bring back Kulusevski before he was ready, and you saw exactly what happened. We ended up losing our two center backs for another long period of time, and of course, Kulusevski still really hasn't returned yet. So yeah, listen, I'm not going to let Ange off the hook for that as well too. I think he was desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. Let's see. John Mapp says, I like everything. Took a team over 100 years, put them in the Prem and kept them up there. Do you actually know how difficult that is? 100%, because consolidation is something that a lot of teams don't know how to do. So from that standpoint, yeah, dude, I can appreciate that, right? But that being said, the interesting thing about this is that on the one hand, when you actually have a recruitment team that actually lines up with the strengths of your coach, you're going to be able to build something. And from that standpoint, it's a little bit different of a situation because from consolidating a team that's coming up to the championship, which takes about 4 years really to establish yourself before you can kind of kick on from being a lower middle table team to a mid-table team to potentially vying for trophies. It was the last part that they didn't do. He was there for 8 years and he didn't do it. Now that's not necessarily his fault because that team just doesn't spend. Whereas at Tottenham Hotspur, it's a little bit different because we're not a team that is in a position to consolidate. If we were able to actually have the summer window that we wanted to have, it probably looks a lot different. That is that to me is the difference between the two situations. Now, by the way, I like the way that Thomas Frank built Brentford, and you can understand why Brentford is still actually where they still are, which lets you know that the program there was built right. Let's see. There's Derma. Big up, Steve. Season's over. We need a reset big time. I kind of agree with that too. I kind of do. Problem at the squad is simple underinvestment in the squad. It is that, but it's also a fundamental mismanagement. In this club, it's not just under Thomas Frank. It was also under Ange Postecoglou, Conte, Mourinho, Pochettino. This club has been very, very underinvested, but also completely mismanaged as well too. And if you're going to fire Thomas Frank, it's not going to solve the problem, because the slate has to be completely cleaned. And that means, if that means it's Paratici out the door, and if that means that it's Johan Lang and his staff out the door, and Thomas Frank, and you just want to wipe the entire deck clean and bring in one dude as the director of football, and he hires his head coach, and the two of them work to rebuild this thing, I would probably be okay with that. All right. AK says Dermot has entered the chat. Yes, he has. He wanted MG White. They failed. Was about to sign. Yeah. Panic buys and loan on last. You know what's funny is that even with Morgan Gibbs White and Eberiche Eze, they were reactionary purchases because they had lost James Madison. That's, they were reactionary buys. They were not just, hey, listen, we're trying to actually show ambition, and so we're just going to go out there and try to get these guys because we're trying to kick on. It's always reactionary. It's why we bought Xavi. And then Solanke goes down, and then we bring in Randall Colomwani. And now it's like, now we sell Brendan Johnson, and Mohamed Kudus goes down, and we still have to replace Sonny. So where's the panic buy? It's happening. So when is it? Me personally, I'd rather have that panic buy through the door right now just to give them some semblance of help. What's been mismanaged? Yeah, they have been successful. Not at, the only one that actually had a modicum of success is Maurizio Pochettino, but he didn't have a massive budget in which to build. Let's come on, come on with it, right? After we get to the Champions League final, we move into Wembley, and then we don't have an incoming for 500 days. You sack him, and then you bring in Jose Mourinho, and you don't back him. 100%. 100% it's mismanagement across the board. 100%. Let's see. Yeah, 25 years of mismanagement gets you where you are. Let's see. Spurs fans are dumb. They panic buy due to the pressure of the fans. If we learn how to be less emotional, we'd be fine. See, here's the thing, man. I disagree with that, man. Listen, don't blame the fans for having expectations. We're the only ones that realize what we are as a club. Right? Spurs fans have massive expectations because we understand the lineage and the history of this club, and we expect to be able to compete. We expect that. And it's not a massive expectation to have at all. Like I don't like the idea of managers talking about real fans, this, that, and the other. It's like, no, man. Like there's a good section of fans that spend their hard-earned money. They work 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and on the one day they travel to go watch this team. Whether that is in the UK or abroad, they do it. Like Spurs have the highest ticket prices in essentially in global football, if not the UK, and fans pay it. And one of the only requirements that we ask is that they play hard. At the very least, it is a minimum requirement. Don't blame the fans. We're not too emotional. We have expectations. And when expectations are not met, yeah, you damn right. If you're paying $125 for a ticket and you can't bring your kid, yeah, you damn right they're going to get emotional over it. And this is what we get. We get chance of boring Tottenham. It's earned. And by the way, if you don't want fans booing, or if you don't want fans to be emotional, then do right by them and put a team on the pitch that actually can live up to the standards of the club. Let's see. That's fair. That is very fair. Not as high as World Cup tickets. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Good. Yeah, good point right there. Yeah, World Cup tickets are insanely ridiculous. All right, John. Quick question: Who is the right manager? Get behind the right manager, right? Yeah, like here's the thing, and I want to make this very clear that I don't want to see this revolving door every 18 months. Eventually, I would absolutely love to see Spurs get it right, but it's literally their coaching hires are so extreme. They're all polar opposites and extremes, right? Now, granted, Mourinho and Conte were kind of the same, but that being said, it's like when you have the trophy cabinets that they have, okay, fine, but it's funny. It's like you go from Maurizio Pochettino to Jose Mourinho, and then you go from Conte to Ange, and then you go from Ange to Frank. It's like, dude, it's polar opposites, and it's me personally. I don't think it's healthy for the changing room, but that's just me. Adrian says 20 days left in the January transfer window. Let me ask you a question, Adrian. How many players come through the door in the last 20 days? Has he had a fair chance? Yeah, he actually has. He's actually had a fair chance, because one of the things that you have to do in order to build a team is you have to get results, man. You have to build credibility. And especially if you're a coach that doesn't have the CV in Europe or doesn't even have the CV in the Premier League, one of the things you have to do right away is get results. Right away. Results build credibility. Results build trust with the fan base. Because if you do go through a little rough patch, your fans are going to look at it and say, you know what, he's got this X amount of games where it's like, okay, we can actually see what direction he's heading into, and that's okay because we know it's going to rebound. One of the things that and this is what I will say about Thomas Frank, is that for me at least, our roster does not match the strengths of the coach and vice versa. And this is just my opinion. I don't think that the players that we have necessarily match the strengths of what he's trying to do. And at that point, that's why for me, and again, John, I don't know how you see it, but when I look at the players on the pitch, and sometimes not only do I see frustration, but I also see confusion. Sometimes I get the impression that these players are still wondering what they're being asked to do. And then you wonder whether or not they're actually capable of doing it. And if that's the case, the players don't match the manager. So the manager absolutely should at least alter the tactics a little bit and try to simplify things and get the team running in the right direction. But that hasn't happened. And I don't know if this is because the losses have continued to pile up and now there's pressure. And now he's doubling down. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. That's my biggest issue, and that's my biggest red flag. But that being said, man, if you like him, you like him. And and you know what? The good news is, by the way, for you is that I'm not saying that's Frank's fault. What I'm saying is his fault. Is if he's continued to play a style of football that doesn't match the players, then that is his fault. But you're absolutely right. He inherited a roster that has to be changed to his liking. That's where I will agree with you. But here's what I will say, that I think you're going to get your wish, because I don't think that Thomas Frank is going to lose his job. That's what I will say. Let's see. Spurs fans are the issue. Don't go to the game then. Yeah. Jurgen Klopp, by the way. Jurgen Klopp won trophies in Germany, had a history of rebuilding teams back to glory. Mikel Arteta won trophies under Pep Guardiola at City. It's a little bit different. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. I want to thank everybody that was tuning in here today via YouTube, and those that were tuning in on TikTok Live. By the way, I want to thank all you guys. Man, it's been fun today, man. I do want to thank John Maps, who was here in the chat. Elevation Sports, by the way. Jimmy Hotspur. Adrian from Spurs TTID, Dermatron from Tottenham Hotspur, THFC Till We Die, AK Shags, Tottenham Trev, and all the rest that joined us today, man. This has been a fun conversation. And again, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe buttons. And of course, if you are on TikTok live, head on over to Stateside Footy. The link is in the bio. So again, thank you guys. I hope you guys enjoy your afternoon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.